Hey guys, Rob from Georgia here with you, aka VHS 82 apostrophe, with I think episode 5 of my something weird, just a thought. Really was gonna take a week off from this and but as you know, things just fall into your mind. You start thinking about something, you're like, you know what? Thought about this long enough. Let's talk about it for a little bit. And that is, of course, not just Spider Baby, but a thought or two in connection with it. Of course, we're talking the Jack Hill film from, really should have been 64. It doesn't get released till like 67. Some say 68, 67. But it really does go up into limbo for a little bit. And then, as it would have it, being a black and white film, and Taylor being the cinematographer, I was watching the doc on. I've got the beautiful Arrow copy of this, and I think Taylor was mentioning how made the statement. I thought it was interesting. Anyone can shoot a film in color. Not anyone can shoot a film in black and white. It's just, I think the use of shadows and lighting, it's a lot more difficult. You really gotta know your craft and know it well. And who knows, maybe this is part of the reason why there was such an exodus away from black and white when it became time, with the advent of color and everything else. You could almost maybe make a minor argument, just as we do with CGI and people. This is a rough way. I don't really mean this the way it takes, but I mean, there's a bit of laziness I think that comes, or I don't really mean it quite like that. There's a bit of a loss of craft that comes from moving from practical to CGI. Maybe one can make the argument moving from the realm of shooting films in black and white to color, there's a bit lost. And he goes into some detail in that minor 36 minute documentary on just how he lit things, man, and just amazing. Using, the main house, and they used the same house for Silent Scream in the 80s. But because there was no power to the house, he had to come up with what would be really reflectors to reflect the sunlight coming in and bounce it in a certain way so that he could get the proper lighting in the proper places. And just that whole process is amazing to me. He really did, that dude, man. I think it was Sid Haig said, dude knows his crap, man. When you're setting up things to reflect sunlight because you don't have another real good light source, you know what you're doing. But that's just, love Spider Baby, man. And I gotta give props to the 22 Shots of Moodz and Horror. I'm going to drop the link to their podcast. And this was the first time I actually became aware of this film. I didn't realize this film even existed. Lon Chaney Jr., of course, is in it. And this is, if you've never seen it, this is, of course, alternative art work. But Arrow released this beautiful, beautiful edition with a nice book inside, nice little write-up. Just absolutely gorgeous. I just looked it up on Amazon. About $20 you can get this for. And I highly recommend and suggest that if you're into a certain type of cinema, let's say the kind of cinema that fits neatly right in the midst of, say, films like James Whale's The Old Dark House, or how about Tobe Hooper's The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, or how about even House of a Thousand Corpses, the Firefly Family, Firefly Trilogy, however you will. This is a film, man. This is a film that was way ahead of itself. And by the time it was ready, finally got some limited distribution, ready for distribution, to hit even, say, the drive-in circuits, they weren't playing black and white movies anymore. So the film really kind of found itself screwed. And it's it's really too bad, because if you've never seen Spider Baby, the Maddest Story Ever Told, which is a take off of the biblical epic film The Greatest Story Ever Told, which I didn't realize, which is kind of lends itself to some interesting thoughts. But Jack Hill, man, he I think he said at the base level, man, ground level, what really drives this film is unconditional love. And this film, when it was getting played, was finding a real home amongst young people, teenagers, mainly girls, who probably realized or were seeing reflected off the screen, or off the screen, this idea that no matter what you do, no matter how bad, there is this thing called unconditional love. You will always be loved. And man, that just and that's the kind of film, man, I that would really probably strike a really unique chord today. But why make a new movie when you've got this one? If you've never seen it, look, I bought this thing cold turkey. I rarely buy films cold turkey unless there is a real good sense that this is worth it to me. And hearing the pod on the 22 Shots of Moodz Horror, I decided, I went online, I pulled the trigger, I just got it. And when I watched it, I fell in love with this thing from, man, basically what you have, like the other films I mentioned, is this, okay, so you've got this family, the Mary family, right? And they sort of live isolated in this house that is just like, the fence line is overgrown with vegetation, and they're sort of out of sight, out of mind. And the opening scene, man, Manton, I can't think of his last name now. Manton, he plays the messenger. Of course, it's not going to be on here. Is it going to be on here? No. Manton, God, I should have taken some notes and I didn't. I apologize. Manton, old school actor, from African-American actor from way back in the day. Dude brings his own unique sense of comedy, right, in a type of acting style that really we don't see hardly anymore at all. And so he's got a piece of mail to deliver to the Mary house, and when he comes up the steps, and you almost kind of get a sense of pre-TCM, man, the way the camera's down low looking up and the house looms and just ominous, man. You just know, man, whatever's inside this house is not good. And he goes to try to deliver his mail, knocking on the door. He sees a window somewhat ajar, I think, and he opens it and kind of sticks his head in there. He's like, hello, hello. And Virginia, one of the girls, she kind of comes around the doorway, through the doorway, and she's got a little net, and she's just like, this whole mantra of, I've got a little bug caught into my net, or my web. And of course, the window crashes down on him. He's kind of stuck in place. She comes up, throws the net over him, and man, and then she pulls out her butcher knives, and she's just like, man, it's time for the sting. Wow. And man, she goes to town on him. Now, yeah, all of it, just about all of it, is off screen, but that doesn't, the way the cinematography is, not a lot is left to the imagination in terms of, it is very easy to imagine, and so what's happening, man. Dude is getting his head carved up, and that is the opening scene. And then we find out Lon Chaney Jr., who basically is the steward of the home, this Mary family, who have been afflicted with this disease as I think as a cause from like inbreeding and stuff like that. The father, before he dies, basically commissions Lon Chaney's Bruno to basically safeguard the home from outsiders, and let his kids just die their slow death, and take care of them so that the outside world doesn't know basically what's happening here. And he does his best. But unfortunately, a couple relatives come knocking at the door, and they got a lawyer, and they basically want the estate. And they're going to do whatever they have to do to basically put the kids away in an institution, and then deal with the chauffeur, which is Bruno, played by Lon Chaney Jr., who is really at the very end of his career. and so from that point, you know, the film moves in and just gets crazier and crazier and crazier until your final just unbelievable end. And an interesting sort of wrap around is Peter, one of our main characters, sort of narrates our way into the beginning. He sort of narrates his way out, and him and Mary, who will become sort of a thing. They've become married. They have a daughter who is now much older. Of course, this is years later, and he's reflecting back, and this is the story that we see unfold. And so basically you're left with this idea that, is the Mary disease really dead or not? And sort of you're left with this idea that perhaps it is passed on to his and Mary's daughter, right? And that lends itself to really what I wanted to talk about. Is Jack Hill had written a script for a sequel right there in around 64. This script has never seen the light of day in terms of a film. He wanted to make it. It was going to be, look, I've heard two things. He said on the commentary for Spider Baby that basically it takes place right afterwards, and Peter and Mary are, you know, enjoying their honeymoon, and they go off to this isolated little village up in the mountains near this lake, and apparently it's a place he had been before at his youth, and it looks a lot different, and so really it's going to follow after them. But I think the title he said was going to be like Vampire Orgy or something. Now I read somewhere else, I thought the idea of the plot was going to be Peter and Mary honeymoon in the Caribbean, and there's going to be a lot of voodoo involved and just nutty madness stuff, man. So I'm not sure, I can't remember where I picked that up from. I picked it up from somewhere. But then today, revisiting the film, I knew he probably mentioned something in his commentary, so I just kind of skipped to the end to where I knew he was probably going to mention it. Sure enough, he did. And so that leads me here. Well, this needs to be a movie, man. This seriously needs to be a movie. And I thought, get ready. And if you don't agree, man, you can drop down and tell me, who do you think would be perfect for this, man? I think Rob Zombie, man. I think this is right up his alley. I think this gives him an opportunity to really kind of fall into some different material, but yet sort of the same, if you know what I mean. Because when he does House of a Thousand Corpses, man, he's tapping into this formula, man. He's tapping into, you know, the old dark house. He's tapping into more than anything. He's tapping into Spider Baby. I mean, there are scenes so reminiscent, man, in this movie. This is probably, I would say, his film House of a Thousand Corpses probably shares more DNA with Spider Baby than it does with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But this is the evolution of this type of film, really beginning probably, which has its origins in, I think it was 1957 that Ed Gein does what he does, right? Well, by 59, I think, is it 59, you have Bloch's novel, Psycho, which is turned into a movie by 60 by Alfred Hitchcock, and by 64 you have Spider Baby. And so there's this just evolution of film from Ed Gein right up all the way through, all showing different strands of DNA from that, right? Never really, at least these films, it's almost kind of like when you see Lovecraft DNA in movies like Alien or The Thing or, you know, other films. It's not Lovecraft adaptation, right? It's DNA. It's Lovecraft DNA. And so you kind of got this Ed Gein DNA that's sort of just littered over the course of some of these incredible movies, man. Beginning with James Whale's The Old Dark House, which I think is one of the most phenomenal old-time movies ever. But Spider Baby, man, is freaking out of this world, lights out. And then, of course, Tobe Hooper's classic in 74, right? Texas Chainsaw Massacre. But then even Rob Zombie was able to capitalize on a lot of this as well. There's some of this DNA, man, that, you know, also shares in, you know, obviously with Spider Baby. It's just interesting how these movies continually evolve. And but what better way to see, you know, Rob Zombie? It would really get him out of that. I think that being sort of pigeonholed into that sort of white trailer park trash type, you know, redneck type characters, and potentially, although the Munsters, man, the Munsters kind of took him out of that a little bit, and put him in an area of allows him to because I think what Jack Hill's like 90 now, so he's not doing it, man. He'd have to executive produce. And I did see on IMDb, it seems like maybe the rights to the original film has landed into someone else's hands. So, I mean, I don't know how lively of an idea mine is of Rob bringing to life his Jack Hill's original script for the continuation of the Peter and Mary story with their daughter. Well, it may not even be with their daughter, just their honeymoon, right? Just having gotten married. And their adventures, as Jack Hill says, their adventures. But I think Rob Zombie, man, it would be, man, if depending on what direction you took with it, it could be just some absolutely insane stuff. If it's the Caribbean and if it's voodoo, it's island horror, it's jungle horror, maybe it's just a lot of nutty stuff. If it's an isolated village up in the mountains, maybe you bring in some really weird pagan cult type of vampire, just over the top. And you know Rob, man, and what I really would love, man, is for Zombie, my dream gig of an idea is have him pay the greatest tribute to Lucio Fulci. I think this is the type of story that could lend itself to some insane, horrific imagery, the kind of stuff that you were just glued to the screen, say the Gates of Hell trilogy, if you will, or even scenes out of Zombie, right? And so that's what I've just been thinking, man. I would love to be like an executive producer or some kind of producer with some real notoriety and influence and ability and money. I would love to be able to pick up the phone and just say, hey, Rob, I got this idea. Jack's script is still hanging around. Why don't we try to get it? Why don't you do it, man? I would love to make those kinds of phone calls, man, because I really do think, when I was a kid, I wanted to be a film director. Really bad. I joined the Army, 4 years of the infantry, a lot changed in my life. But I still have this innate passion, this love for cinema, man, especially Italian cinema. But man, Rob Zombie is one of my go-to directors, man. There are some real hints of what he's capable of, saying even his H2, man. I love the nightmare sequences in there with Laurie, just absolutely insane, and just that scene when she's in the coffin, man, kind of. It's just, I think this would be right up his alley. I think he would do well with it, man. But if not Rob Zombie, who could take Jack Hill's story and move it forward, but in a way that really does pay tribute to Jack Hill, the original film, but push the story somewhere that, man, the type of insane cinema we haven't seen in a long time, at least in the cinema. Now, Evil Dead Rise, man, gave us some interesting imagery, and at times, pretty horrific imagery. But man, I think we're moving towards this area where it's becoming more likely that we'll have an opportunity to see something like really nutty. Maybe there's our City of the Living Dead, aka Gates of Hell. Maybe that movie is coming. Somebody is going to do a movie like that, and it's just gonna be nutty, right? And so anyway, just some rambling thoughts about this stuff, going back to 57, Ed Gein, and seeing it develop throughout some of these movies. And if you've never seen The Old Dark House by James Whale, dude, that movie's freaking lit, man. That movie's lit. And of course, obviously Spider Baby. Again, it's like $20 on Amazon, man. I bought it cold turkey. Lon Chaney Jr., man, and some great moments in this movie, man. Just great movies. Oh, and, if I didn't mention it, Sid Haig, man, is just insane in this movie. Virginia, man, who plays Spider Baby, man, she is. It's crazy. She died in a terrible car accident in the 80s, and apparently she was living with Marlon Brando at the time, and who was just torn by that loss. But anyways, this the cast, when you get into the 36 or 32-minute documentary, it is pretty amazing. It's just the amount of talent that sort of just kind of came in and helped Jack Hill just pull off, I think, just an incredible movie. Which, again, his script that's been hanging around for how many? Since 64, man. I mean, we're talking over 40 years. His script has just been hanging around for a sequel. It needs to be made, but it needs to be made by hands that can make it. And if you don't agree with me about Rob Zombie, then well, you gotta tell me down below, who do you think is a likely candidate? I'm curious, man. I'm really curious. So anyways, if you've never seen it, you gotta see it. That's just the way, you just Spider Baby, man. Check out the 22 Shots of Moodz and Horror, their podcast on it. This is what opened me up to it for the first time. And this has easily become one of my favorite movies, man. So I think that's about it for this something weird, just a thought, to ramble on just for a little bit. Sorry about the time length. I see going on 21, so we'll go ahead and end it here. Hopefully this has been a fun waste of 20 minutes. As always, man, as always, we end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream.